Hello and welcome to the Buzzing Biologist podcast. Your hosts are Christopher Xavier,
Shyam Ramachandran,
and Jose Nakajima.
Today, we will be discussing a very important ethical issue, genetically modified organisms, otherwise known as GMOs. For those of you who have not heard of this development, we will begin by introducing the practice, discussing stakeholders, and devising potential solutions. As always, we would love to hear what you all have to say. If you would like to share an opinion, please fill out our form at tinyurl.com/buzzingbiologist.
Thanks for introducing the topic for today's podcast, Chris. GMOs are animals whose genes were modified artificially to express desired traits. GMOs are almost always containing foreign genes found in other organisms like bacteria and fungi. There have been many advancements recently in the field of GMOs. A major advancement is CRISPR. CRISPR is a new technique in gene editing that makes GMOs much more efficient compared to older techniques.
I've heard of CRISPR before in some of my biology classes.
Yeah, also fun fact, researchers who developed CRISPR won a Nobel Prize a few years back.
Wow, that's really fascinating. GMOs definitely look like this is a big deal for the scientific community. I even remember reading a scientific article titled Germline Transmission of Genetically Modified Primordial Germ Cells by Lavoie and others. But why are some people up in arms about this? Jose, do you have any thoughts on this?
Yeah, it's probably because of how unnatural GMOs are, as Shyam said, and also the potential long-term health effects. The GMOs generally contain more sugar and are larger than the non-GMO counterparts, but they also contain less nutrients because of that.
And now that we have a background on the ethical issue, we can delve into the stakeholders. To all our listeners out there, it's important to take into account stakeholders, and we will look into the three most apparent at this moment, and hopefully you can connect to them and expand on this discussion.
So the first stakeholder we want to discuss are farmers. Farmers may feel pressurized to use GMO seeds in order to stay competitive in the market. The use of GMO seeds may be against a farmer's ethical principles, but in order to turn an economic profit, he must use GMO seeds as well.
It's clear that farmers are affected, as you said, Shyam, and it needs to be considered when discussing GMOs. I read an article, Ethics in the Societal Debate on Genetically Modified Organisms, a request for sense and sensibility, written by Jan de Vos and others, which discussed how GMOs originated and how farmers are compelled to use them.
Yeah, farmers are definitely a stakeholder. And another stakeholder would be the environment. And oftentimes the GMOs are more fit to the environment which grow in, and they contain antifreeze genes, anti-pest genes, and many other genes that benefit the individual GMOs. Making a more fit organism artificially hinders the natural selection greatly and potentially destroying the diversity in the environment in the GMOs live in.
Wow, that's really fascinating, Jose. GMOs are definitely unnatural, and that could definitely go against an individual's ethical beliefs, making this a very complex issue. Both of these stakeholders that we've discussed are involved on the production side of GMOs. Are there any parties that are affected downstream?
Yeah, it's a very interesting question, Shyam, and I think I have a third stakeholder for you, the consumer. GMOs may contain new proteins that are previously foreign to the body, and additionally, there's a possibility here of an allergic reaction. When genes between species are spliced, there have been documented cases of allergic reactions occurring in consumers.
Wow, that is interesting. Now that we identified the three important stakeholders and we know the problem, let's find ways to address this ethical issue.
Alright, so one action that could be taken to address the issue of GMOs is to make a set of rules or restrictions on what organisms can be modified and where the genes come from. For example, some crops that we consume daily could have genes from various organisms, bacteria or bugs, that many humans would not consume knowingly.
Yeah, we could restrict gene modifications to be only done with the same species or genus, so that the genes in the GMOs would resemble more of a naturally occurring one.
Wow, that's interesting.
Yeah, restrictions would definitely help. And another action that I thought about is making a labeling system of the GMO products, so that the consumers are more informed about where the genes are coming from, and they can also make a better choice that fits them. For example, in the article I read, Genome Editing of Lactic Acid Bacteria, Opportunities for Food, Feed, Pharma, and Biotech by Rosa Borner and others, where the industries were interested to use a GMO bacteria in their product. Having a label system will allow the consumers to know that the lactic acid bacteria was modified.
Yeah, that's a very interesting solution, and both of those solutions could be looked into, and maybe one of them could be potentially used in the future. It'd be very interesting to see how exactly it would play out if one of those were to go through. And for all our listeners out there, we hope that this podcast was informative and gave you a perspective on genetically modified organisms and their ethical implications and possible solutions to the problems that they bring, and how to maximize the benefits that they come with.
Thank you for tuning in, and we hope this has been very informative.
Thank you.
5